Hey everybody, welcome to episode 188 of Fight Chat Fridays. We're going to the European Championships 2024 for this one, and it's going to be the final of the minus 69 senior male division. So two good fighters. We have Ukraine versus Slovenia, and we have Artem from Ukraine and Bien from Slovenia. So we're going to get stuck into this fight, see how it was won and lost, have a further discussion as well on maybe there's been a lot of talk this week, particularly after the Euros, about rules, about umpiring, scoring, warnings, etc. So it's becoming a lot of discussion. So we might share some of our thoughts and share what we're actually doing, particularly with Adrian, to push this forward and bring some ideas towards the committee of the ITF, being involved in the ITF coaches committee. So we're going to share some ideas that we have, and maybe you can get involved in the discussion in the comments as well.
Okay, well, let's jump into the match straight away. Bian Slovenia in blue on the right-hand side, and Ukraine Artem in red on the left.
Yeah, so two young guys starting. I think with this one, we have Bien coming up just from junior, and he just boasted of James in the earlier rounds, which was one of the top ranking guys on his side. Starting off, we see a lot of squeezing towards the edge of the ring from Bien, which is a good effective way. We've noticed recently from our last video, if you looked at it, that the warnings are very, very important. So if you can get a nice start on the scoreboard by squeezing someone towards the edge, that will set you up in a good position to get those nice clear four flags that you can build on quite nicely.
Yeah, again, the reset, though, is something that we will definitely be talking about at the end. There's starting to see from a couple of referees this tendency to, when a person is exited, to pull the person who is in control of the center of the ring right back to the middle, which is, again, I know Richie's not happy, I'm not happy. It's completely taking away the momentum of the match, and is a very, very unusual thing to do, not something that's particularly mentioned within the rules in terms of trying to bring people back to the center. You need to give the person who's traveled one mat, but that's it. And going further kind of removes all that pressure you've just created, and it means that I can understand why they might want less warnings, but that isn't how you go about creating it. This one, though, I don't know, man.
We're trying to build momentum, of course, and you're trying to squeeze person towards the edge as part of the game of sparring, and we can see from the stats we do how important it is. But this match, in terms of the strategy, we can see it's a front leg battle to begin with. A lot of push-pull. Some things that I realised a lot from this particular championships is a lot of springboard testing from the front leg and then sucking somebody in to come back and fire back as a retaliation before they exit to be able to come over the top. And we can see that happen between hacks kicks, which we see actually from both fighters so far. And we actually see it coming over the top with the backhand as well, which they use the front hand to paw down, to pin that front leg to come over the top. So whether it's the leg or whether it's the hand, it's definitely something that is featuring a lot. Here we go.
And we've seen a couple of attempts here where we're having less engagements. Like, we're seeing one-off shots, but we're seeing less of those kind of over and back engagements. But a thing we've been seeing across the championships as a whole is the tendency of the last shot to be the important shot in the engagement. I think the stats in this particular one will let us talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing with these. We're trying to build a body of evidence to be able to come up with some different ideas and different discussions and a little bit of backing to be able to understand. So sometimes when you're watching it, you might have your own theories or whatever, but we're actually building a body of evidence and tracking the data and the stats over a while now to be able to come up with different ideas, to be able to push that forward, to show us what's working, what's the reasons everything is happening, whether it's warnings, whether it's rules, etc.
For sure. So we're starting into round two. Pretty reasonable lead, a 2-point lead really for Bian at this stage. So let's see what happens as we get into round two.
Yeah, so the foul cancels out the warnings as of so far, but this extra warning then gives an extra point to Bien. So one full score on the scoreboard to start off. There we go again, coming over that front hand, pinning the front leg with the front hand. And the way they carry the front hand, both fighters, take a look at this. They're able to just get a feel of that front foot because the front foot is going to come. It's what everybody does. They carry. We see it's the most carried shot that we have. And by having your front hand in a good position, you can get your glove on top of that foot, pin it, and then come over the top. That's why we see the backhand being such a good tactic in this particular fight.
And we can see some patterns emerging. So Ukraine is giving up the direct line in terms of the side kick. He's not trying to win the front leg battle. He's trying to come around it, either with the high hook kick or the low turning kick from the back leg, or by clashing it, as we've mentioned, with the front hand and coming over the top. But I suppose Bien has had generally across the whole match enough variation in the entry, in the length of the kick, and in terms of the follow through on it, to make it, I suppose overall really quite effective.
Yeah, I really like the extension he gets on his front leg side kick. It's actually a side kick, not a carry all the time,
Yeah,
where
for
he's
sure.
extending that leg, banging it into the body, and extending his upper body away in the opposite direction to get that full extension. So now we're coming into the last 40 seconds. This is where it comes down to the most important part of the fight. Ukraine are going to have to load it on here, 4-0 down with a little bit of work to do with the last 40.
And we're not exactly seeing the best use of the ring position. So Ukraine is we're coming back to this thing having to launch a blitz because he's not winning on that straight line with the front leg, and waiting for Bian isn't going to work while he's 4-0 down.
Yeah, we'll see a couple of attempts to be able to get to the hands. We need this entry shot. You have to have a shot in the back pocket to be able to put some pressure on. Here we see Bien slipping 2 blitzes. We'll talk about later what actually is the repercussion of this. It's not something that I particularly agree with, but we'll have a chat about that
No.
later. I don't think you should be getting a warning for slipping a blitz unless you want to keep your head on that line and get punched. So last 13 seconds, Bien is going to use that front leg to squeeze and fence off like we talk about. Keep his head out of danger to make sure he doesn't give away any big shots, and tried to close out that match with a 4-0. He has a warning in the back pocket, but he doesn't even have to use it. Just good ring management towards the end of the fight. Takes the European champion.
Yeah, in the end, we're talking about what we've got: a 6, a 5, a 4, and a 2 point lead across the cards there. So fairly safe and comfortable by the very, very end, but it wasn't always that way. And so this one didn't have an awful lot of changes of leaders we go through, but we'll see that as we go to the stats.
Yeah, so like as we look at that fight, we don't expect anything out of the norm particularly, but when we get into the nitty gritty and break it down, look at the stats, look at the slow mo, we kind of have a little bit of an advantage to be able to go into a little bit more detail. And what we're trying to do here, as we said, build just that body of evidence to be able to explain what we're looking for as a sport. And I'm sure this is what people have said to many people, whether it's through the umpire committees, the tournament committees, the coaches committees, with your involvement with the ITF, with a lot of surveys, with the rule changes, etc. So this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to put anybody down or say that this referee is terrible, blah, blah, blah. It's about highlighting what some of the things that we're trying to push forward as a sport overall for our particular ITF to make it better for everybody.
So let's just jump into the stats first of all, and we'll look at what were the techniques that we're using, how much of it. So as you're breaking down through here, blue were the shots attempted from Ukraine, red the shots attempted from Slovenia, and then vice versa. Yellow are the ones where contact was made. And again, we always define contact as it's not necessarily a score, but the shot has carried you into physical contact with the other person. And the same thing is white for Bien. So a lot of the same techniques used. The only thing in the difference really being that Ukraine did attempt the blitz, and Bien pulled a couple of downward kicks out of the bag throughout the match.
Yeah, other than that, we have a big score overall for Bien with actually using the side kick, which is quite rare. We don't have the same amount of attempts of a side kick versus a front leg carry. That's something which is quite rare. And then even more unusual to have the turning kick up there with the same amount of a count. So very, very good variety of that leg battle that he's able to use, mix it up between the front leg carry, the turning kicks, and the side kicks as well. But I really, really do like his side kick and his aggression with that, not just flicking out that leg. He's using it to kick and score points hard to the body with every shot.
Yeah, and I think what we do see from Artem there is that his turning kicks are more used to counter that front leg side kick or to try to interact with it. Whereas I think the majority of Bian's turning kicks were the final shot in an engagement or in an exchange, or just used directly to attack the dropping leg. So letting the leg hit the floor and taking the turning kick back over the shoulder. So even though they're both throwing a similar number of turning kicks, they're doing them in quite different situations.
Next up, we have a little bit of a big example of what we said here when we get to the end of this. But let's start with some average scores first. So 0.25 as the average score. That's not going to do much work for you there over the four judges, where it's 4.5 in favor of Bien. So he's a nice advantage there with a 4.25 safety margin, which shows that the warnings weren't really detrimental to him because it was quite close in the end. When we get to the end, we can see that the first in, last out exchanges, We see Ukraine are getting into contact first more often with 10. And then on the flip side, we see Bien able to get the last into contact shot 12 times. So we're kind of coming up with a little bit of a theory at the moment from what we can see. And we're going to build this from the stats that we do gather. But it's almost coming that it's a reverse point sparring now, where it's not about the first shot you get anymore like it used to be. It's about having a look at that exchange, and then maybe the referees are highlighting that last big exclamation point at the end of the exchange. And that's kind of why and how people are getting returns on the scoreboard for points. So that's something we'll keep an eye on going forward. Is it going to be turning into reverse point sparring and getting that last shot in contact? Who knows? It's something we'll keep an eye on. But the exchanges overall 15, that's a bit low from what we usually see. So a little bit more of
For
a
sure.
tentative match. And then we do see as well one decision flip. So once he controlled the match from the start, he was in control of that. And it's very hard. We see most people, once they can take control of the match, then it's easier for them to open up. If you're trying to counter from the beginning, it turns into a very difficult challenge and an uphill battle. So we're very, very short in time. You don't have many opportunities to get into contact, as we see. If there's only 15 exchanges and you're losing from the beginning, it's going to be an uphill battle. So it's something that you need to be aware of. You can't put all your eggs into one basket of being a complete counter fighter. You need to mix and match, be able to squeeze, get some aggression and momentum going as well on the front foot.
Okay, so talking about our contact, so what we're looking at between the two guys, only 16 contacts from Artem versus 24 from Bian. 50 attempts from Artem gives him a contact rate of 32% or a success rate of 32%. Bit higher from Bian, 44%, so 55 attempted, 24 contacts made. What that translates to in terms of time is for Ukraine, one contact every 15 seconds, one every 10 for Slovenia. Very similar in terms of the warnings, one foul for that holding in round one for Artem, but way above average in terms of the number of restarts. So we have a restart in this case, we have the beginning of the match, the beginning of round two. We have the 15 warnings and 14 warnings, one foul, and then we had one nothing happened restart. So that's a very, very high number. I suppose if we looked at all of the matches we've kept stats on so far, the average number of warnings is about 9. So we're about 50% above average in this particular match. And so that means more restarts. More restarts means a very choppy match, less chance to really get those engagements. The engagements are being stopped very early on. So it puts it, as you said, back out to that kind of testy range, trying to get your score on your first attempt or directly counter the front leg, and makes it not exactly point sparring, but into very, very short burst exchanges.
Yeah, and we can see like what we've been tallying up thus far. We can see the person who attempts most of the shots and makes most contact wins 96% of the time generally. So we can
Yeah.
see that is tried and true again. If people are the highest that we do see is really up around that 50 range, and that's not attempted, that's contact. So that's double the amount of shots for Bien. So we can see he's almost like 50% reduced in terms of his output that we can see as the highest level that we do come across. So
Mm.
obviously that is a factor every time it gets stopped. So we are a little bit privy to some people being told as well as referees that potentially you need to actually have more involvement. So I think that's a big problem as well, is that some referees are under pressure to impress and they have to be seen to take control of the match and have an input. Whereas a lot of times it's not what we really want for the overall sport. We want it to flow. Obviously, we want to have control and somebody in the middle to control the match, but we don't want them to be interrupting it too much because it stops the way that we want it to go. We don't want the stop start. We don't want the point sparring. We want that natural flow, and that's we've seen it, and it was showcased many times over the Euros, and it was beautiful to watch. Some fights with team sparring in particular. Great back and forth. We're seeing 360 into headshots in all in one exchange. That's the beauty of ITF. That's what we want to see. We don't want to stop start and break all the momentum that we're getting in that natural flow.
Yeah, just to finish up in terms of our triad of control, one comment that we've made, I think, before we started on this was in relation to, although Bian didn't have to work exceptionally hard to force it, and I think that's kind of where Artem was comfortable anyway, that element of ring control, there didn't seem to be any particular focus from Artem on that aspect of the battle. Seemed to be willing to give up where he was in the ring or just adapt to wherever he was being attacked from, and just dealt with everything as if it was his own discrete situation. So what we're kind of looking at here is, are you positioning yourself in the ring and positioning your opponent in the ring to your advantage? And I think Artem almost didn't take that into account at all and tried to win each exchange as it came, regardless of ring position. For
Yeah.
me, a big one here, even compared to the tempo or intensity, the intensity was kept down. I think the referee played a big part in keeping the intensity of the match down, so we didn't get to test that. But the distance side of things, I just thought with the downward kick that scored the headshot in the first round, and a couple of very near miss blindside turning kicks from Bian, I thought he controlled the distance very well.
Yeah, so there we go with that fight. Congratulations to Bien coming up from junior, taking the European title. Not an easy achievement. So congratulations to him. What we might do now is have a little bit of a look at some things we want to highlight in terms of warnings, etc. So we did have a look at a post. I'll just check it right now live where we're at. So as of now, the question that we had on our YouTube community, are warnings ruining ITF sparring? Just a little bit of a thought-provoking question, just to get some ideas. And then we had underneath, what are your thoughts on scoring, umpiring rules at the recent ITF European Championships? So at the moment, the poll is at 67% voting yes in favor of warnings potentially ruining ITF sparring as we are right now. Now, that's just personal preference, what you want to see as well. Obviously, we need rules. It's very, very important to have rules,
Sure.
but we need to be able to manage it because sometimes it's getting a little bit out of hand. We see from most of the fights that we track, if you have less than 6 warnings, there's an 80% chance you're going to win. So that's obviously very, very important, which means warnings become more important than the scores at times. Okay, and then if there's even more silly warnings, or let's call them soft warnings for things that are not really a big impact, then it becomes even more important and it may ruin the match. So that's kind of what we're getting at in terms of, is it ruining ITF sparring? Because it's becoming more about the rules and the infringements rather than the beauty of the techniques and the strategy, etc. So it's just something to be aware of. We do have a little bit of a clip here that we put together from this particular fight even, where we'll have a look at some things where we can have a little bit of chat about whether it's restarts in the ring, whether it's about potential warnings for holding, clashing, avoiding sparring. So some of these rules are open to interpretation, which is a little bit of a problem. And when you couple that with referees being told that they need to be involved, they need to have a little bit of control over the match, I think it puts a bit of pressure on them to stay involved and get involved a little bit too much.
Yeah, and I suppose really what we're looking at here is, and this one's a foul, what we're really looking at is there's the letter of the rules, okay, which you could say the referee is doing their job exceptionally well if they apply, the letter of the rules each and every time. But then there's the element of where is the integrity of the game. So if the letter of the rules breaks the integrity of the game, the rules are wrong. And if the referees that best, let's say, are most consistently and most severely apply the rules are considered to be the good referees, because they're the ones that are following the rule book to the letter of the law, we've got a big problem if the general consensus among the competitors and coaches is that that isn't how the game should be played. So I think that's where we as a community need to look at this and decide, okay, what is it that we actually want? Is the problem the referee, or is the problem the rule? And I think that's really important, so we don't end up in a direct conflict between coaches, umpires, and referees. We need to distinguish between referees like applying the rules as set by the ITF, Tournament Umpire Committee, and distinguish between that and poorly applying the rules, which is a refereeing issue.
Yeah, so we see like some of these ones here that are very much open to interpretation. Is it because of holding? Is it because of low kicks, which clashing is inevitable when we have such a front leg dominant game? And then we also have the slipping of blitzes, which for me is probably down to avoiding sparring, which I don't personally agree with. There's a difference between not getting hit and avoiding sparring. So we see different variations of this happening here. And we do see an axe kick coming over the top at the very start as well, which resulted in a warning. Not sure why that happened. So maybe we'll have a look at some of these, have a chat through them, and have potential discussion on what rules need to change. For me, I think we do need a 3-tier system. We need the warnings, which are accidental, okay, and then we need more clarity on what that is. And for example, some of these would not fall under that category, in my opinion. Then we need to have the minus points, which are things like holding, etc., but not fouls. So warnings and the minus points need to be differentiated a little bit, because some people potentially are getting fouls and then disqualified for holding and things like that, which we don't want to see. I think the DQ fouls would need to be tallied up for complete misconduct and things which shouldn't happen, not
Yeah,
for things
the
that happen
excessive
accidentally.
contacts. Yeah,
Exactly. So I think we do need that three-tier system, particularly to avoid more disqualifications, because you need to be very, very careful these days not to be disqualified, which shouldn't be the way. You should be disqualified for blatantly disregarding the rules, not because you're trying to win and fairly compete with the game that we have.
absolutely. And okay, we picked out some of these examples here, and the reason that I, elected to pick these ones are, I think all 10 examples in this little clip, uh, if I want to referee a match the way I would like to see a match, and that's not necessarily saying I'll apply the rules exactly as stated in ITF, but there isn't a single one of them that I would actually give, not one.
Mhm.
And
So this is the
so,
first one. So as we go through this next one, a little
so
bit of a
yeah, this is
clash
the
here, but I
first one.
don't think anyone. Yeah, so I'm not sure where this one comes from. From my point of view, he gets 3 points and he gets a warning for it. So technically, he should actually get that score taken back. Also, that was a head kick, and one judge
Yeah,
scored that as 2 points, as we can see on the last card. So I'm not sure what's exactly happening there. How can you get a warning for something that's a head kick, and how can you get 2 points for a head kick while two other judges score it? So there are 5 people here involved, and we have most of those people with a different opinion of what happened. So to me, it's the rules here that need to be tidied up a little bit rather than anyone's interpretation.
yeah. This one here is a foul for holding, and it, to be quite honest, is just it's a little messy, and it's one of those ones where this is for me an appropriate use of the break. Nothing happened to continue, um,
I think it's just
because
because Bien is getting that little bit taller with the straighter arm. It's just
yeah,
coming across that it's a bit more messier from Ukraine, which I don't think it is, but that's the way it's perceived.
here we have a clash. So it's either the kick to the back or a low kick. Here we have another clash. No idea why Bien would be getting that. Here
Especially
we
being
have
on
another
top.
one. Yeah, here we have one with a, it ends up being a kick to the back. It makes no odds. There's no
Again, this
advantage.
one here, the last one, Adrian, if we can go back to
Yeah.
that, it's
Oops.
this
Sorry.
restart here. So it's not an exit. So like this should be continued at that point, not started in
Yeah.
the center of the ring. So all the momentum now and all the ring pressure that Bien has gained, he's lost, which isn't
Yeah.
in the
So
rule book.
this
So
is the moment
that's a
at
big
which the
problem
match
for
is
me.
stopped, and Artem has his foot about 1 foot away from the edge of the ring. And by the time we restart, we can see it's completely reversed, where Bien is now beyond the middle of the ring, and there's about 2 mats to the edge of the ring for Artem. So again, yeah, as you said, there's been no advantage to all of that hard work. So in other words, in some ways, that little kick to the, that was given as a kick to the back has, he's taken, Artem has taken a warning, but he's been given 2 mats for it as well, which
Hmm.
is,
It's even better than
an
an exit,
unusual
really.
exchange. Yeah. Again, this one I
Not
think
sure
he's
about this
given as
next
a
one.
warning for red for the hand on the foot, but
Okay.
um, yeah, again,
And now, no idea why you would give a warning for this. You need to slip a blitz if you don't want to get hit in the head. There's many
yeah.
other ways you can do it, but that's not avoiding sparring, in
And
my
in this,
opinion, if that's what the
no,
rule was
and in
for.
this case, the referee has asked the jury present if the kick was low. So it's not like, I think this is the appropriate action for the referee to take. Um, and the referee has said yes, but he's just been kicked. He never got to finish his kick. So he's just been kicked with a side kick here. He never got to finish his kick. So being penalised for getting kicked is a little unfortunate.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and you see, that's why we're trying to, again, a slip here, same thing again. But this is why we're advocating for maybe a discussion on the rules to be changed, because in real time, as we watched this video just before this and when we did the highlight of the fight, we didn't really see these as distinct standouts. But then when you break it down and have a look, it is. So it's not about the, like, in real time and in the heat of the moment, these things aren't really obvious. But I think it's the rules that are need to be changed a little bit, and we need to be careful of giving away too many soft and too many unnecessary warnings, in my opinion.
yeah, I had to watch this last one a few times and then look at the signal from the referee. I think this is being given as pushing, which is
Okay.
an unusual one. Um, But again, I think that the part that we have to look at is, for me, I want to make that really clear distinction between what is referees following the letter of the law and us not liking it, and the referee would say incorrectly applying the rules or making a mistake, which are two different things, and you control for them completely differently. So one is something that would say the tournament committee, or sorry, the coaches committee, the athletes committee, if we have enough good examples to build a case, we can go to the tournament committee or the umpire committee and say, hey, we're seeing this, it's coming up this often, it's impacting this number of matches, it's causing these kind of scenarios, and here's what we think we should do about it. And I think that's another huge thing. Complaining about things being the way they are is one thing. Coming at it with I think this would fix the problem, I think this would be a creative solution, would be much, much better. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if umpires are making mistakes, well, we have to look at the whole thing there, which is, are we selecting the right people? Are they appropriately trained? Are they resourced on the spot? Because it's a very hard job. Like, if you want to concentrate for 4 days straight, 8 hours a day, it's really, really difficult. So to expect people to make the correct decisions under pressure all of the time for that length of time is really quite difficult. So how are we asking them to do something that is beyond what we as human beings are capable of at the moment? So we have to look at all elements of this and be quite pragmatic about it as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it is up for discussion, and we can have a chat about it. But ideally, we do need to go to a more structured forum where we can actually make some changes and implement some positive changes for everybody involved. It's not anyone's fault per se, but let's get together as a community to be able to make things better. That's the objective here for most people, I think. Either way, congratulations to Bian again from the video that we did look at this week, and highlighting some beautiful ITF techniques and strategies as well. So hopefully we can have some more of that going forward, some more videos. So let us know which ones you'd like us to cover, and we'll get stuck into those and continue to build that body of evidence. And hopefully that will be able to give us a little bit of structure behind what we're talking about.
Excellent. We'll see you next week.
Catch you then.